Louisiana versus all y'all. Jarrett Rosa here today with sports anchor and reporter Chris Hagan of Fox 8 New Orleans. Slidell native, went to Slidell High, then on to LSU, where we met when he was at Tiger TV and I was at the Daily Reveille, and he's kind of climbed up the ladder from there, spent some time in Joplin, Missouri, was back in Baton Rouge at WAFB, and now since 2015, I believe, down in New Orleans at Fox 8. And Chris, man, what's been going on? I told you it would be pretty laid back with it, but how have things been treating you this summer?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Got a chance to take a couple trips and get out of Louisiana a bit, like distance from the sports scene briefly, but back in it, looking forward to training camp and hopefully eventually get married this year. We postponed our wedding a few times now, so we're on try number 4. Yeah, we're on try number 4 this November, so hopefully the Delta variant doesn't crush that.
Yeah, I saw you tweet about that earlier and immediately was thinking back to, I think it was Mardi Gras of 20 before we realized all hell was fully breaking loose in the States, and we were talking about me crashing that wedding, and that was well over a year ago now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like every time I look back at, Mardi Gras 2020 pictures, it's like, man, that was wild. I can't imagine being around that many people now. And now we're kind of back to it. We've been out since. But, yeah, it was a long time ago. I almost feel like it's part of my identity now. Like the guy who's engaged may never get married at this point. But hopefully it's November.
What has the last year plus been like for you guys from the work side of things, too? It was such a weird stretch, obviously, and then we started seeing a little bit more really earlier this spring, things feeling like they were getting a little bit more back to normal. But as you guys as a sports team navigated some of the challenges, what did that entail for y'all? What were those conversations like and hurdles and whatnot?
It was weird because, we have a really big sports staff. I mean, myself, Garland, Sean Fazan, Juan Kincaid, Edwin's our photographer. And we've got a producer who was John Bennett, and now a new guy, Vasilios Nicolau, who came in from Baltimore. So we've got a big sports staff. And it's great when you've got Saints, which, really is a year-round thing to cover in terms of the season, the preseason, postseason, free agency, draft, all of that. So it helps when you've got Saints, Pelicans, LSU, all the sports, and then high school football. Like, you need that many people. But then, like, when everything came to a halt, it was like, all right, what do we do to continue producing and keep putting stuff on the air? And I think we got creative with it, and we turned out a lot of content. I mean, while sports technically stopped at the same time they didn't, and it was probably late April or May before everybody we cover had a trainer, and everybody was getting work outside of school because schools weren't able to practice, but guys were still able to work with their quarterback coaches or their athletic trainers, guys specializing in positions, and those trainers have done a really good job keeping kids active. And so we started to cover a little bit of that. The Saints made a lot of players available, and so we got to see how they were handling the pandemic and how they were addressing things. Same thing with the Pelicans and the NBA in general, and watching that start back up and just seeing how everybody adjusted. And so while professional sports in general had to make adjustments to protocols and how they were going to operate safely, we were kind of navigating the same thing and how we're going to operate safely as a news station within our building, but also how we're going to cover sports. And I think, stuff like this, Zoom interviews and all of that, it has made our jobs different, better in a sense of access, worse in a sense of it's nice to talk to people in person, especially like when you're trying to get to know someone or do an interview or make it feel personal and not talk through a computer. But I think it's just forced everybody to be flexible. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think change is good. And, people are always hesitant to it. A pandemic makes you change. And so I think we kind of did that for the better.
I was going to ask you if there was anything that you guys had adjusted to during that stretch that now, as we take steps, again, hopefully knock on wood, Delta variant and all that, that as we take some steps toward normalcy, that you guys have kind of continued to incorporate or feel like you picked up and will carry forward moving moving into the future, but Zoom may be the biggest answer to that question.
Yeah, Zoom's a big one. I just think communication, at least within our staff, within our building. I mean, we functioned really well. Typically we've got us all in the building, and we are just kind of bouncing ideas off each other in person. That's how we come up with our content for Final Play and all of our shows, daily coverage, who's going where, who's doing what. But I think through various apps, Microsoft Teams, whatever, our communication's been good to where it's almost become habit where we wake up, hop in the group, hash out what we're going to do, whether it's for a show 2 days from now, whether it's for daily coverage, whether it's ideas for the Final Play every week on Sunday, hash that out, and then you've got a record of it, and we've been good at communicating and making sure everything gets done, whether we're in the building or not, whether somebody's on the go. Schedules can be all over the place. If you're covering high school football, you're probably in the morning, going to a 7-on-7 or going to a practice. If you're anchoring it, you're in the evening. Garland and I may work on the same day and never cross paths, but we know what each other's doing for each show and, who's got what prepared, et cetera. So I think that's the biggest thing that's going to stick with us.
Most of you guys grew up in or around New Orleans. How weird is that to think back to like childhood and look at yourself now and say, okay, I'm covering the Saints or I'm covering this NBA franchise in the city that wasn't necessarily even here when I first started looking at what was going on in the sports world. Does that like register at times and kind of, yeah?
It does a little bit. I would say mainly because, and they won't like me saying this, but I grew up watching Lee Zurich and Juan Kincaid, and now I work with Lee Zurich, Juan Kincaid, so they won't like me aging them like that. But I mean, I used to go to football games on Friday nights at Slidell High, and one of them might be live at the game, So, and then we'd watch, them do highlights or a show or something like that. So, that's when it kind of hits me sometimes. But for the most part, I don't know. I've always had a weird relationship with being on TV. I never really think about it. I don't want that to be my whole identity. And for better or worse, like when I'm on camera, whether it's in studio or in person, I never really think about how many people it reaches. Obviously I conduct myself in a way that is appropriate for how many people it reaches, but at the same time, I don't think about it that much. I just kind of, I don't know, go about the job. But it is cool to be in the market where, I grew up and covering those teams like you mentioned, especially the Pelicans. I really like covering NBA, and outside of a pandemic, it's really fun because of the access and how many games there are, and you really get a sense of, being along for the ride. So I guess that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. The aging component of that is extremely funny to me because I definitely remember also growing up and people that are at your station today being on the television when we were.
Yeah.
When did you realize that this was kind of a route that you wanted to go? As a kid, did you grow up and wanted to be around sports media? When did that first sort of click?
I was always big in sports, watching, playing, etc. But there was this show, I think it was like my sophomore, junior year in high school, Dream Job on ESPN. And it was like a reality show where they had people compete, like whether they had a background in journalism or broadcast at all, or like they didn't have any kind of background at all, but they wanted to have a job at ESPN on SportsCenter, reporting somewhere in the building, somewhere around the worldwide leader. And it was a competition, and it was cool to watch. And, I remember watching it with my parents, and then, it just kind of hit me like, well, maybe I could just go to school for this. And, I like sports and I want to be around it. I never thought of myself as like a writer until I got to college or anything like that, but I just knew that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then I visited LSU my junior year and happened to bump into the dean of undergrad for the mass comm school, and the rest was kind of history. Ended up going there and loved every bit of it being at LSU, and I think it's a great school to prepare you, as are many in Louisiana. But I think that's kind of how I got into it, and I think now the door has opened even more for people to get into it because you don't there's no gatekeepers anymore. I mean, you can start a YouTube page right now. So if it's something you decide you want to do or want to try, like start a YouTube page and you can try it and see if that's something you want to do, or if writing or broadcasting or talking on camera is even for you. So yeah, I guess it kind of all fell into place for me a little bit, but I would say in high school is when I decided like this is what I wanted to at least try.
You mentioned the access, I guess, of at least trying some things out now. And one of my barbers down in New Orleans, where I still go get my hair cut and make that drive anytime I need a little trim, he said his son and one of his son's friends, who I think they may be into double digits now, but they hop on and do kind of their little video show talking about whatever in the sports world has caught their attention, and watch what all of you guys are doing, and just kind of what any professional level sports reporter on television is doing, and they're already trying to mimic it before they even necessarily get to high school. So it's kind of crazy.
I mean, I think that's what you can do now, and it's great. I mean, you can get a camera. I mean, you don't need a camera. You get a cell phone.
Yeah.
You can put out all kinds of content, and really good quality stuff. And I think it's a good lesson in how much reach you can have. Probably a good lesson, and hopefully don't learn it the hard way, and like responsibility on the internet and stuff like that. But that's what I always go back to now is just like, and I'm sure you see it from what was going on even at LSU when we were in school, and what we like kind of learned and were taught, and the access we had to things is just exponentially grown. And student media there still does a really, really, really good job, and they do a good job on a variety of platforms. And I think that's really cool. I always tell, I've talked to a number of classes at LSU over the years and other places, and they've just got so much ability to do a lot of cool things right now. And I think that's the best part of it, is that, there's no one stopping you from accomplishing it or going after it and at least trying it.
Has there been anything really major that has kind of surprised you that you would have never kind of realized, that caught you off guard about the profession somewhere along the way? Or maybe like a pivotal moment for you where something clicked and you started approaching something a different way because of some of your experience to that point in your career?
I would say like the biggest like teaching moments I've had were probably in Baton Rouge at WAFB, and working with a great crew there with Steve Schneider and Jacques Doucet, and I was a sports reporter under those guys. And then a lot of the photographers there, Darren DeQuano, Rob Hollins, I can name all these guys, but like I learned a lot from them in terms of efficiency, in terms of storytelling, writing, reporting, breaking news. I mean, I worked a lot, and I was around you a lot, like whether we were, doing high school stuff, LSU, whatever it was, like it felt like I was everywhere, and I had to be efficient. I had to wake up in the morning, like ready to go at a moment's notice. There were many a trip from like home to the gym to work, maybe not in that order. And I learned, I think, just how to work efficiently, how to work smart, and I guess how to wear a lot of different hats. And I think over time you mold that into how you want to be as a reporter, and how you work efficiently, and then how you find balance. Because I think that was somewhere where I did work a ton, and I don't know that I had the best work-life balance. And then here, I feel like I still work a ton. We all do. And I think everybody in this business does. You don't get into journalism and work a 40-hour week. But I think I've just learned to be more efficient and try to find that balance. Getting engaged and having a fiance and having to balance that and other parts of your life has certainly helped. So I think it's part of the process. But I think it's something that everybody kind of learns at a different pace in their career, and depending on what you're going through or where you're at or what the coverage kind of demands, if that makes sense.
Yeah, going back to some of those Manship school classes, I remember a time or two where Tyler Batiste, who's now up at The Athletic and has been on Louisiana Versailles channel, but students asked us what was kind of the worst part or biggest drawback of the job, and almost in unison, we'd say the schedule and kind of being prepared to figure out how to manage your life around, particularly in sports, such a nights and weekend heavy schedule when, you're trying to see friends who are having the more traditional schedules, or you're trying to date or, continue a relationship or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was talking to a class. I think it was this past spring. It was Chad Savvy, who's a morning anchor at WDSU, and he was teaching a class at LSU, and it was me and Catherine Terrell, who is at the Athletic as well, and the students were asking questions, and we're answering them, and like, I guess kind of unknown to us, it didn't turn into like doom and gloom, but it became like, yeah, it's really tough. The schedule's tough. You got to balance this and that. And then Chad kind of interjected. He was like, but it is a fun job. We're like, yeah. It's still a fun job, and we still enjoy doing it. But it certainly does. Like, I think it's on everybody's mind all the time, is trying to find that balance in the schedule. And my fiance jokes, she'll put like, the magnet of, the Saints, LSU, and Tulane schedule on the fridge and be like, all right, that's the work calendar. Those are our open dates. And you can kind of see, where everything else falls in. And I think that's a big part of it, is just knowing what you're getting into and being prepared for it, but also finding a way to enjoy it. And I think you have to enjoy the work. You have to enjoy what you're doing, the storytelling element, the video element, whatever it is that your job is. Find a way to make that your passion, or at least find what you enjoy in the job and bring that out. And that's the best way to handle it. So, it doesn't feel like a work-life balance. It feels like enjoyable all around.
I asked you kind of when you started to realize sports journalism was a route for you. What is your background with tennis? Because you are the first Louisiana sports reporter I think of when I think of, okay, Wimbledon just happened, who would be a good person to chat with this week? And obviously, you tweeted some through the tournament, but my thought of that dates back to like conversations maybe a decade ago. Did you play a lot of tennis growing up? Yeah.
Yeah. So my parents played. They got me and my sister into it. I was probably about 7, 8, 9 years old when I first, started doing like little clinics around the corner at these tennis courts. And I didn't really pick it up big then, but then I got back into it in like 7th or 8th grade, around 12 or 13, and I was hitting one day, and there was like a private coach on the court next to us, and kind of asked if I was taking lessons, and I said not, really seriously right now, and I began training with him just a couple times a week, and it clicked with me. I really loved the game, loved playing. I played like USTA tournaments and stuff in high school, and played for Slidell High, and played some club tennis at LSU when I had time as well, and still try to play every now and then. And I don't know, I just really loved the game. And then past that, like, I'm like the ex-high school athlete who can still kind of tell you what's going on, like an ex-high school quarterback could tell you, what's going on better than, the average armchair quarterback or something like that. And so I still think I have a pretty good understanding of tennis, and I like watching it. I like kind of dissecting it. And I think like I would love to coach one day. I would love to, maybe assistant coach. I don't know if I have time to actually coach, but to at least share some knowledge, because it's something I picked up on well, and I find myself watching matches and I'm kind of in agreement with the commentators. So I think I know what I'm talking about, but it's a game I really like. And I've followed it for, I don't know, it feels like, well, God, I'm old. God, I've followed it for like 20 years now. Holy cow. That's crazy. That was like a light bulb moment with like, dang, I've been watching tennis since like really got into it in like 2000. Wow.
We've gone from dating Lee and Juan to you dating yourself, aging.
Yeah, man. Jeez. That's not good.
As someone who's passionate about the sport, what has it been like to watch this kind of era where we just watch Novak Djokovic catch up to 20 Grand Slam event titles, catching up to Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, and to see all of those guys at an age where you can kind of appreciate it. What has that been like as a fan of that sport?
It's awesome, dude. And I was a huge Andy Roddick fan growing up. I mean, down to like I had some of the same mannerisms as him on the court. It was crazy. But I really liked his game. And he was obviously the biggest American player from like 2002-ish to about 2010. And in terms of like this era of tennis, Andy Roddick could have easily been a guy who won a couple Wimbledons and several U.S. Opens. He just happened to play in an era with Roger Federer. And then Rafael Nadal comes along, and he even upends Federer eventually on the grass court. And then Novak Djokovic comes along, does the same, and most recently not only won Wimbledon, but beat Nadal pretty soundly on clay. And it's a crazy age where these guys keep one-upping each other, but the ultimate, I guess, trait is health and longevity. And Roger Federer's had it for a long time until recently, and he had to pull out of the Olympics this week because of his knee setback at Wimbledon. He's had it for a long time, enough to win 20 majors. And even, his last Wimbledon title, like, he had to absolutely fight for. And that's what you respect most about Federer, that he's kept it going to 40 years old. Rafael Nadal is a guy who's won 20 majors as well. Could probably have like 25 if his own knees were better. If he could, play more through the hard court season and it didn't have the wear and tear on his body. And then you have Djokovic, who's younger than both of them, has many years ahead of him with the way he takes care of his body. And you hear commentators say it all the time. It's true. The dude is like Gumby on the court, the way he bends and slides and breaks all the rules of tennis. Like, it was, you slide on clay courts. You don't really slide much on grass. You don't slide at all on like hard courts. And he's sliding and moving and stretching and bending and getting to all these balls. And he's an incredible player. And, I'll tell anyone who will listen, in like 2006 or 7, it was when Djokovic and Gael Monfils from France, they both went pro. They were excellent juniors. They went pro. And Djokovic had to like bow out of a lot of tournaments early in his career. I think he ended up having like a gluten allergy, and it was really setting back his fitness. But I was like, man, this kid is going to be really good. He's really young. He's got all the strokes. He's super consistent. He can play with the top guys. And sure enough, he got his health in order, and he's been an absolute machine. And I like to say I called it, and I know other people did. I'm not the only person in the world who did. But, like, it's been really fun to watch his entire career. And he's a guy that could end around, like, 26 to 30, maybe more majors. It's not crazy to say, because as good as Federer and Nadal have been in terms of health and fitness and their ability on the court, Djokovic is even better. And it's crazy. And I don't know if we'll ever see it again in our lifetimes, at least, because look how long it took to happen in the first place.
I was going to ask you where you thought he could reach in terms of that number, if he could get to 30. And so, yeah, you hit on 26 to 30, you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of factors in it, and health is obviously a big part of it. He's going for, I guess if he plays the Olympics, he could get the Golden Slam, where he wins all 4 majors and an Olympic gold medal potentially this year, which is unbelievable. But if he continues, he's always been a good clay court player. Nadal's just been the best. He beat Nadal this year. Like, he owns the Australian Open, plays well at the U.S. Open on hard court. Got kicked out of that tournament last year, so he could technically really already be at 21. Plays well on grass. Has a ton of Wimbledon titles now, 5 or 6, I can't remember. And so on what surface or what tournament is anybody going to upend him? Because no one has really come that close yet. I mean, Federer took him 5 sets at Wimbledon a few years ago, and that was Federer. And everyone else has run up against him. Just I don't see it. I need one of these young guys, a Dominic Thiem, a Sasha Zverev, a Tsitsipas, a Daniil Medvedev. Like, I need one of these young guys to really hone in and show that they can go toe-to-toe and they're not afraid of Djokovic. But you haven't seen it yet. He's dominating. So that's why I think with the way he takes care of his body, like, if he plays to 37 or 38, he's going to get 30. I think so.
Does the process of watching these guys kind of take over and one-up each other, and Nadal catch up to Federer, and now Djokovic catch up to both of them with still this extra set of years we think in front of him, does that make you think that we will see someone surpass the number that we're ultimately going to see from him in our lifetimes, or are we looking at just kind of the peak of this, and we're going to continue to compare everyone to?
I think for our lifetimes, I mean, it's hard to predict 20 years from now, but I think like you can see it early. You can see it pretty, I think you can see it pretty early. And I think, the guys that have come closest to like catching, not numbers wise, but like maybe beating Djokovic in a tournament, or like, guys that sit around that top 5 or 6 in the world consistently are like Dominic Thiem and Sasha Zverev. And I think Thiem's like mid-20s. Zverev's low, I think he's like 22, 23, something like that, maybe younger. But I don't see anyone who's like 20, 21 really making that consistent push right now, to where I think they can not just break through at a young age like Djokovic did, winning the Australian Open in 2008, but then continue to do it. Like if someone else won a major right now and they out-navigated a healthy Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, I would say, okay, do it again. And I don't know if it gets done again, which is, it's hard to find that consistency. And where you really see it is not just the majors, but look at the amount of major quarterfinals, like the streak of quarterfinals these guys make, the streak of semifinals. And then Djokovic is now 20-10 in major finals. Most guys don't even play in major finals. Most guys don't get to major quarterfinals. He's had 30 opportunities to win majors already and lost a lot of them to Nadal at the French, or come up short in other tournaments. It's crazy to think he's even lost 10 finals, right? As good as he is. So who else is going to do that right now? Who else is even close? Nobody. No one's even making quarterfinals as consistently as the big three have. And I'd say Andy Murray in his day and Andy Roddick, like, were each making quarterfinals and semifinals as long as their health held up. No one's come close to that level of consistency yet. So there's that level. There's like Federer and Nadal. And I'm telling you, Djokovic is like, he's a step up right now, because he's going to keep going. And I just don't think that there's that level of consistency right now, and no one's showing that they're going to get there. So until I see like a 19-year-old play a heck of a tournament and do it like 2 or 3 times in the course of a major in like a year, I don't know. I don't know if we see it. I don't know if we see another person get to like 10 right now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's nuts. It is an unbelievable level of consistency in a sport that is unbelievably hard in terms of coaching. Can't have it on the court, and the mental stability it takes to be one-on-one out there, solving your own problems, and to consistently play at a high level and overcome a variety of opponents and skill sets. It's unbelievable. That's why I have just the ultimate respect for Djokovic.
Tying 2 or 3 of these topics back together, when you were a young tennis player at a Slidell High, did Juan or Lee or any of your now colleagues ever get a chance to catch you live at any of these events?
I don't think so. I was a good player at Slidell High, and I made state and played in some big matches, but I don't think anybody was covering tennis like that. I might have had an article in the paper. You can ask my mom, Ronnie Hagan, about that one. She still probably got it somewhere in Slidell. But that's about it. I don't think I was covered by those guys. I was just out there trying to get a dub.
There you go, man. Well, I appreciate you. I didn't mean to eat this much of your afternoon or evening.
I ate it myself. You talk about tennis. You won't shut me up. Like, I could go another hour. So I'm glad I just got an outlet to kind of rant about it.
Good deal, man. Well, yeah, my pleasure. And as you mentioned, Saints training camp right around the corner. All of football across Louisiana and across the country right around the corner. And once that starts, nothing really stops until we get to next summer.
Nope, it keeps on rolling. We'll be in, we're already looking at football season, and basketball season starts. It just goes.
There you go. Again, he's Chris Hagan from Fox 8 New Orleans, Louisiana native, a Slidell native, product of Slidell High, including that tennis program, and then LSU and the Manship School, and for Louisiana Versailles, Jarrett Roser.